Well, good morning, good afternoon. We are back to the study of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Today, we're starting chapter 16, which is You Cannot Serve Both God and Mammon. Mammon means wealth, means money. In the English Standard Version of the Gospel, you will find it as You Cannot Serve Both God and Money. But because it's more, we'll find in the original by Kardec the word mammon, and we find it in many of the gospel translations in English, the word mammon. It was decided to keep mammon, but it's to be understand that you cannot serve both God and wealth, both God and money. That's the idea behind the chapter here. And again, we are going to discuss different aspects of wealth or lack of wealth. And this chapter starts with 5 passages from the gospel, some parables, some passages from the gospel. So it goes a long way before it reaches the texts from Kardec and the spirits. So, but we are going to try to better understand, if possible, these parables or these passages according to some interpretations found in the Spiritist doctrine. Okay, so who's going to read for us today?
I'll read, John.
Okay, all right.
Okay, the salvation of the rich. Number 1, no one can serve 2 masters, for he will either hate one and love the other, or he will become attached to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and Mammon at the same time. Luke. Continue with the 2?
Yes.
Okay, number 2. Then a young man came to him and asked, Good master, what must I do to acquire eternal life? Jesus answered him, Why do you call me good? Only God is good. If you want to enter that life, keep the commandments. Which commandments? He asked. Jesus said to him, You shall not kill, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. The young man answered him, I have kept all those commandments since my youth. What do I still lack? Jesus said to him, If you want to be perfect, go and sell all you have and give the money to the poor, and you will have a treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me. Upon hearing these words, the young man went away very sad because he had great wealth. And Jesus said to his disciples, Verily, I say to you, it is very difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I say this to you once more. It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
So very quick here, some comments. It's interesting when Jesus says, why do you call me good? Only God is good. Saying that the only perfection is God. That's what he meant there. We are all aspiring to perfection, even him as a perfect spirit. It's not God. It's if he was God, he would have said the interpretation of some religions that Jesus and God are one in the same is of course a convenient interpretation of human human saying, but and we know that God is the creator, and Jesus is the governor of the planet, and is a perfect spirit that reached perfection before the formation of this planet and being responsible for this planet forever. But still, we are always progressing, and even the perfect spirits are progressing. You may ask, how can we progress if we are perfect? That's beyond our our capability of understanding, but we know that if the law is of progress, even the perfect spirits are progressing as the universe is expanding and the universe is progressing also. Jesus asks him to follow the commandments because remember, Jesus said, I did not come to destroy the law. I came to teach the law, to improve on the law. That's not exactly what he said, but that's what he meant. Meaning, he didn't come to go against the teachings of Moses or the teachings that the Jewish people had at that time. He came to build, to add. We remember that Moses brought the disciplinary lessons that were important at that time to organize and to, because that's what we were ready to listen at the time of Moses. And when Jesus came, he brought the law of love, the law of one another. And we had at that time the ability already to go further into the understanding of the eternal laws. So here Jesus said, you shall not kill, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. These are part of the 10 commandments. And then when Jesus tells the young man, go and sell all you have and give the money to the poor and you have a treasure in heaven, did Jesus really tell the man to sell everything and give everything he possessed and get rid of all his wealth? Meaning with money and wealth there is no salvation? No, that's not what Jesus wanted. What Jesus was trying was to give us an example that as long as you are attached to material wealth, as long as what you have here attaches us to this existence, it will be very difficult for us to reach a better state of evolution when we are back to the spiritual world. As we studied last week with Elmo, without charity, there is no salvation. The definition of salvation that we discussed, which is an internal thing, not an external salvation. Jesus did not say here that it is impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He said it is very difficult, meaning wealth, it's not an impediment to evolve to enter the kingdom of heaven, as Jesus said, meaning finding a better place for us. It makes it more difficult because with wealth, we become more attached to the material things, and attached to the material things when we leave the physical world is more difficult for us to leave behind what we have here, and that makes our adaptation back to the spiritual world much more difficult. And when he says it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle, we have to understand that in this image, in Hebrew, the same word designates both camel and rope. So the correct translation here, it's easier for a rope to pass through the eye of a needle, because of course a camel cannot pass through the eye of a needle, than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, it's easier. It's not the only way. It's not impossible. That's why what Jesus keeps repeating, saying that wealth it makes it more difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible. And it's very important for us to keep those words in our minds when we continue studying this chapter that all talks about wealth all the time, about wealth and lack of wealth and what we do with it. Okay. Second one.
Guard yourselves against avarice. Number 3, Then amidst the crowd, a man said to him, Master, tell my brother to divide with me the inheritance that will befall us. But Jesus said to him, Man, who made me to judge you or decide your allotment? Jesus then said to them, Be careful to guard yourselves against all avarice, for no matter how much abundance a man may have, his life does not depend on the riches he possesses. He then told them the following parable. There was a rich man whose lands had produced extraordinarily, and so he thought to himself, What should I do? Because I do not have a place where I can put all that I have reaped. Here is what I shall do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, into which I can put my entire harvest and all my possessions. And I will say to my soul, So you have many possessions saved up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, and enjoy. However, at the same time, God said to the man, How foolish you are. You shall, your soul shall be taken this very night, and then who will possess what you have accumulated? This is what happens to those who accumulate wealth for themselves, but who are not wealthy before God. Luke.
Okay. Yes. Again, the concept of wealth and what should we do with wealth here, Jesus brings an important concept, right? We really don't know when we are going back to the spiritual world. So in this case, he said this man is going to die discarnate that very night, and he is going to leave behind all his material possessions, because we only take back with us to the spiritual world our intelligence, intelligent evolution, and even more our moral achievements in this spiritual, in this existence. And what he's saying here is that what this man should have done with his wealth, distribute, use his wealth to practice charity, because then he would be wealthy before God, the last phrase here. So those who accumulate wealth for themselves and do not practice charity risk going back to the spiritual world, not knowing when, and leaving behind all this wealth without taking advantage of it. So again, going back to what we discussed last week, the practice of charity, right? It's important for us to have to strive to achieve a comfortable life in terms of possession, and each one has a different set of needs. But if we are struggling to make ends meet, it's very difficult to dedicate ourselves to others, because we are so concerned about our own needs that and to trying to survive, that is very difficult to be able to find the time to help others. Again, not impossible, because nothing is impossible, and there are those that can dedicate themselves to others. But when you have nothing and you have no ways to provide for yourself, you become a burden to society. So instead of helping others, you are in need of being helped. So that's not really a good solution. So the idea here is to balance your possessions to your needs, and distribute the excess, or even distribute what those around you are in need. So that's what the idea behind this parable that Jesus said, guard yourselves against avarice, that the parable of the rich man who wouldn't share his wealth. Okay.
Okay. Number 4, Jesus at Zacchaeus' house. Having entered Jericho, Jesus was walking through the city, and there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was the chief of the publicans and very wealthy, and who wanted to see Jesus in order to get to know him, was not able to because of the crowd, for he was quite small. Therefore, he ran ahead and climbed the sycamore tree in order to see him, for he would have to pass by there. Having come to that spot, Jesus looked up, and seeing Zacchaeus, said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for I must stay at your house today. Zacchaeus came down at once and welcomed him with joy. Seeing this, everyone murmured, saying, he has gone to stay at the house of a sinner. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said to him, Lord, I shall give half of what I owe to the poor, and if I have caused harm to anyone, no matter who, I shall repay him fourfold. Jesus said to him, this house has received salvation today, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save those who were lost. Luke.
Jesus said, I didn't come for the healthy, I came for the sick, right? So in the history, in the story of Zacchaeus, the publican, so how was he seen? He was seen as a miser, as the publicans, the ones that collect taxes, were hated by the Jews because they were Jews that worked for the Romans to collect taxes and give to the Romans. So he was seen as a sinner. He was seen as, he was the chief of the publicans. Jericho first. Jericho, remember the passage of the Good Samaritan, going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jerusalem, the spiritual home. Jericho, the city where all the sins were, in a sense. It was the commercial capital of Israel at that time, of the region. And Zacchaeus was the chief of publicans, very wealthy. But the fact that Zacchaeus went to look for Jesus already tells us something. He was feeling guilty, right? Because he wouldn't go look for Jesus if he wasn't looking for some kind of salvation. And when he tells Jesus, Jesus sees him. He's a short man. He goes to the top of a sycamore tree, right? That there is a whole symbolism there that you can look for it. The tree being the sycamore. But Jesus asks Zacchaeus to come down, and even more, tells Zacchaeus that he's going to stay at his house. Can you imagine Jesus telling everyone that he's going to spend the night at the house of a sinner, or the top sinner of the city? That would be a very big shock to those followers. The idea of him going to see Jesus is because he was looking for a way out of his guilty of all his wealth. Jesus tells him, listen, I'm going to eat at your house. When he arrives at his house, Zacchaeus tell him, I'll give half of what I own to the poor, and if I have caused harm to anyone, no matter who, I shall pay him fourfold. So Jesus says, this house has received salvation. Was the salvation an external thing that Jesus brought to the house, like we discussed last week? No. Salvation came from Zacchaeus himself. He was the one that by his repentance and his desire to share his wealth, is finding salvation for himself. Okay, so Jesus tells us again, we are all children of God, and we can all be saved from ourselves if we repent first and then act to repair the damage we did to others and to ourselves. So that's the story behind Zacchaeus on this parable. Okay, if anyone has any question, comments, please just let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue reading the parables, because we still have a couple of parables to go before we go to the text. Okay.
Parable of the evil rich man. Number 5. There was once a rich man who dressed in purple and linen, and who treated himself magnificently every day. There was also a poor man named Lazarus, who lay at his gate completely covered with sores, and who hoped to mitigate his hunger with the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. However, no one gave him any, and the dogs came to lick his sores. It so happened that the poor man died and was taken by the angels to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man also died and had hell as his grave. While he was tormented, he lifted his eyes on high and saw Abraham far off with Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send me Lazarus so that he might wet the tip of his finger in water to bring a little refreshment to my tongue, for I am suffering awful torment in these flames. But Abraham answered him, My son, remember that you already received your riches during your lifetime, and that Lazarus had nothing but ills. That is why he is now being consoled, whereas you are in torment. Moreover, there will forever be a large abyss between you and us, such that those who would like to go from here to there cannot, just as one cannot come here from where you are. The rich man said to him, Then I beg you, Father Abraham, to send him to my father's house, where I have 5 brothers, in order to attest to them about these things, for fear that they too might come to this place of torment. Abraham replied to him, They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them. No, Father. No, Father. Abraham said, the rich man. But if someone from the dead were to go to him, they will repent. Abraham responded to him, If they do not listen to Moses or the prophets, they will not believe anyone else, even if someone from the dead were to come back to life.
Okay. Here, Jesus picks up the 2 extremes, wealth and complete lack of wealth, poverty, right? So he says about the wealth, he had he was dressed in purple and line. He had wealth, he had food, he had everything. Lazarus had nothing. He lacked any resources. He was sick. He was hungry, and he didn't have any basic health assistance. The dogs came to lick his sores, so he didn't have any health assistance. So here you see the 2 extremes. Now, he didn't say here, Jesus, that the complete poor are going to reach heaven and the wealthy are going to hell. What he's saying here is that this poor man named Lazarus was laying at his gate, and he wasn't being assisted by the rich man. The rich man had the opportunity to at least tried to alleviate the pain of Lazarus, but he didn't do anything. Lazarus, on his side, was there just asking for help, but it doesn't say here, but we know that he wasn't blaming God or blaming everyone else for his pain. That's why he accepted his pain with resignation, and that's why he found himself on let's say on a good place, right? And the wealthy man, when he finds himself in what we call the lower zones here in Spiritism, but in the parable we can call hell, because he was in flames, right? Abraham, which is one of the leaders of the founding fathers of Judaism, says that you received your riches during your lifetime, and Lazarus had nothing but ills. So you already receive your reward. He is receiving his reward now. You are receiving torment because you didn't help anyone. And you created a large abyss between us. And it's impossible to cross. We know that's not exactly, it's a parable. It's not exactly like that, but that's the representation of the distance between those that accept their faith with resignation and endure the difficulties for a better future, and those that don't use their wealth to help others, right? We could say here that we have two very opposite sides in all aspects. And it's interesting in the end when he says that he asks Father Abraham, send him to my father's house to tell my brothers that there is life after death, that they need to take care of themselves so they could avoid this torment. And Abraham replied, well, they already have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them. And he said, someone from the dead will go to them, they will repent. And Abraham says very wisely, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not believe anyone else, even if someone from the dead were to come back to life. And we see this until today, right? We have many proofs on the survival of the soul. Again, we have proofs of reincarnation, and still you have a vast majority of people that refuse to accept the concept. Well, vast majority is an exaggeration, sorry. Let's start again. We had a large amount of people that refuse to accept the concepts of reincarnation, and a small amount of people that believe that everything finishes with this life, especially in science. If you go back to the lecture by Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida on the that we had in the beginning of March at the United States Spiritist Federation, he mentioned how for a very long time science has all the proofs of survival of the soul, but they close their eyes, they refuse to accept. So again, I used to joke that when we talk about the materialization and this physical phenomena of spiritism, if we were in a room and someone materialized in front of all of us, spirit materializing in front of all of us, half of us will run away, and the other half that will say and be fascinated will tell their friends, and no friend will believe them, or very few will believe them. So the proofs, the material proofs are not enough. We need more, and that's why Emmanuel told Chico Xavier at a certain point in his life that let's stop with the physical phenomena and with the materializations, because they don't stay. And the books and what you write will stay forever and can be used by future generations. Because what's important is the teachings, the moral teachings, the intellectual teachings. The proofs were important to attract the attention, the materializations were important to attract the attention of people in the beginning. But nowadays, they are much more rare. And actually, we talked about this with Renato on Thursday. They still happen. There are some spiritist centers in Brazil that do the materialization, but they are not really important in the sense that what stays with us is the study.
Oh God.
Well, guys, it looks like John is gone.
Yeah.
So let's just, give him a minute. He's probably gonna come back soon, right?
Yeah. Okay.
These with the learning, the moral and intellect.
João, we lost you for a little
Right?
bit.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So where did you lose me? Where did you lose me?
The last thing I heard was the materialization and the importance that of it. That's what I heard last.
Okay. So the materialization and these physical phenomena, they are temporary. They are, for those that see them, that's what matters. And then they don't stay. So the teachings, the books, and everything else is what really end up staying with us. And that's why it's what it's more spread out today is the content that we can use to study and to help us move forward on our lives. Okay.
Okay.
So the parable of the talents.
It's parable of the talents, number 6. Okay, has to go up.
Oh, you don't see the last.
No,
it doesn't go up.
Moved. Yeah, it hasn't moved.
The Lord acts like a man who, upon having to make a long journey outside his country, called his servants.
Okay, called his servants and placed his property in their hands. And having given 5 talents to one, 2 to another, and 1 to another, according to each one's different abilities, he departed immediately. Then the one who had received the 5 talents went out, did business with the money, and gained 5 more. The one who had received 2 gained 2 more the same way. But the one who had received only 1 talent dug a hole in the ground and hid his Lord's money therein. Some time later, the servant's master returned and called them to give an accounting. The one who had received 5 talents came and presented him with 5 more, saying, Master, you placed 5 talents in my hands. Here are 5 more that I have gained. His master responded to him, you good and faithful servant. Since you have been faithful in a small matter, I will entrust you with many others. Share the joy of your master. The one who has received 2 talents soon presented himself, saying, Master, you placed 2 talents in my hands. Here are 2 more that I have gained. His master responded to him, you good and faithful servant. Since you have been faithful in a small matter, I will entrust you with many others. Enter into the joy of your master. Next, the one who had received only 1 talent came and said to him, Master, I knew that you had a hard man. You are a hard man who reaps where you have not sown and gathers where you have not scattered. Thus, since I was afraid of you, I hid your talent in the ground. Here it is. I am returning what is yours. The master, however, answered him, you evil and lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered. Thus, you should have at least put my money in the hands of the bankers, so that upon my return, I could have withdrawn with interest what was mine. Therefore, let his 1 talent be taken from him and be given to the one who has 10. For to those who have already have more will be given, and they shall have in abundance. But for him who has nothing, even what he seems to have will be taken from him. Let that useless servant be cast into our outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gasping of teeth.
So this parable, it's a parable that always calls our attention. Is one of the well-knowns, right? And at first reading may sound strange, right? Because the one who buried the one talent that he had was trying to save, not to lose it, but the others used it. So Brother X, or Humberto de Campos, interpreted this parable in two passages, and one of them you can find in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, chapter 30th, his interpretation. And he says that talents are benefits granted by God to humankind with the purpose of making them progress morally, intellectually, materially. They must be used in the form of different types of work and efforts that is up to humans to develop. So the activity that these works impose on them broadens and develops the intelligence, and the intelligence that first concentrates on satisfying material needs will help later understand great moral truths. Meaning, we evolve learning first the intelligence, and then applying the intelligence to progress, and by satisfying our material needs, we end up also looking for the moral necessities, moral needs, and we're going to read that. So talking about the parables, what Humberto de Campos tells us, that the first servant that receives 5 divine grants. So we could say that he received health, wealth, ability, discernment, and authority. And what did he do with the talents? So with health, by respecting health, he acquired time. By spreading wealth, he acquired gratitude. By using his ability, he received esteem. By moving discernment, he received conquered balance. And by distributing authority in the name of God, he gained order. So he used his 5 talents to evolve morally and intellectually. The one that receives 2 talents, that also stands before the Father, received intelligence and power. What did he do with intelligence and power? By elevating intelligence, using it, he obtained work. And by submitting power to the will of God, he attracted progress. So he acquired what was needed to evolve. And the last one that received only one talent. What was the talent he received and he buried? He received pain. Pain is the celestial gift of spiritual illumination. What he did, he hid the pain, he made all the ways to avoid pain, and gave back pain to God. He didn't use pain to evolve. He didn't use pain to progress. So what we cannot be afraid of when we are receiving these talents, we cannot be afraid of work, we cannot be afraid of serve, we cannot be afraid of make friends, of disappointing others, of suffering, of incomprehension, of happiness, and above all, of pain. So this is the interpretation that I thought it was very interesting that Umberto de Campos, Brother X, made of this parable. And I think for us here, to understand that the idea behind this is that we have to distribute what we possess. That's the only thing that is asked from us. We have talents. We still don't have 5 or 2 or only 1, but anything we have, it's our responsibility on our path of progress to use these talents to help others, to practice charity, like we studied last week. So this is what it's behind this parable. The one that hides, buries in the soil his talent, what is he doing? He's avoiding living in the world. He's avoiding interacting and using this talent to make it multiply, because he's afraid of losing it. We cannot be afraid of using our talents. We have to understand that according to our limitations, we have to do the best we can to use what we have to help others. Okay, this was the last of the parables. And again, among brothers of other lands, chapter 30, you have the interpretation, a slightly different interpretation of what I gave here. He talks about the different aspects of each talent, but basically is the same. That's what we'll discuss here. Okay. Comments, questions here? We're going now into the explanations.
Okay. The providential usefulness of riches, the trials of riches and poverty. Number 7. If wealth were an insuperable obstacle to the salvation of those who possess it, as might be inferred from certain words of Jesus, if interpreted literally and not according to their spirit, then God, who grants riches, will have put in the hands of some an instrument of unavoidable perdition, a thought that is repugnant to reason. Undoubtedly, wealth is a very slippery trial, more dangerous than poverty because of its allure, the temptations it creates, and the fascination it exerts. It is the supreme arouser of pride, selfishness, and lust. It is the strongest tie that keeps humans bound to the earth and diverts their thoughts from heaven. It produces such giddiness that we often see that those who go from poverty to wealth soon forget their former condition, those who share with them in it, and those who help them in it, and they become insensitive, selfish, and vain. However, even though wealth makes the journey difficult, it does not follow that it makes it impossible, or that it cannot become a means of salvation in the hands of those who know how to use it, just as certain poisons can restore health if used purposefully and carefully. When Jesus told the young man who had asked him about the means of inheriting eternal life, "Get rid of all you have and follow me," he did not intend to establish an absolute principle that everyone must sell what they possess and that salvation could be obtained only at such a price. Rather, he meant to show that the attachment to earthly riches is an obstacle to salvation. In fact, the young man believed he was in accord with the law because he had observed certain commandments, and he therefore recoiled from the notion of abandoning his wealth. His desire for eternal life did not go as far as making such a sacrifice. What Jesus proposed to him was a decisive test meant to uncover that was at the core of his thinking. From the world's point of view, he could undoubtedly have been a perfectly honest man who did not harm anyone, did not slander his neighbor, was neither vain nor proud, and who honored his mother and father. However, he did not practice true charity because his virtue did not extend as far as self-sacrifice. That is what Jesus wanted to demonstrate. It was an application of the principle. Without charity, there is no salvation. If these words were taken literally, the consequence would be the abolition of wealth as detrimental to future happiness and as the source of multitude of ills on earth. Furthermore, it would be the condemnation of the labor that could procure it. This would be an absurd consequences that would take humankind back to primitive period, and it would in and of itself contradict the law of progress, which is a law of God. If riches are the source of many ills, if they arouse so many evil passions, if they provoke so many crimes, riches per se are not to blame, but the human beings who abuse them, as they do all God's gifts. By this abuse, they render pernicious what would otherwise be very useful to them. But this is the result of the inferior state of the terrestrial world. If wealth could produce only evil, God would not have put it on the earth. It's up to humans to make it produce the good. If it is not a direct element of moral progress, it is undeniably a powerful element for intellectual progress. The truth of the matter is that humans have the mission of laboring for the material improvement of the planet. They must reclaim it, cleanse it, and make it suitable to someday receive the entire population that its range can bear. In order to feed this ever-increasing population, production must be increased. If one country's production is insufficient, it will have to be sought elsewhere. For this very reason, relations between nations become a necessity. In order to facilitate such relations, it is necessary to destroy the physical barriers that separate nations and to render communication more rapid. For such endeavors, which are the work of centuries, humans have had to extract materials from the bowels of the earth. They have sought in science the means to execute their endeavors more safely and rapidly. However, to accomplish them, resources are needed. Necessity drove humans to create wealth, just as it drove them to discover science. The activity required by these endeavors has increased and developed their intelligence, and this intelligence, which they have concentrated primarily on satisfying their material needs, will help them later on to understand the great normal truths. Since wealth is the primary means of executing these tasks, without it, there would be no more great endeavors, no more activity, no stimulus, and no research. It is with good reason, therefore, that wealth is considered an element of progress.
Thanks, Zoraida. Again, it's a very progressive and forward-thinking, these teachings by the spirits at the time of Kardec. Remember, the gospel was published in 1864. So the spirits start telling us that if wealth was an obstacle to the salvation to those who possess it, it was an insuperable obstacles. Then it wouldn't make sense to have wealth, right? So, and where would be God all powerful or just, all merciful? Because if God allow through the natural law for us to create wealth, and we cannot be saved by possessing wealth, then the natural law will be defective, and we know the natural law is perfect. So if the natural law is perfect, everything that happens goes according to the natural laws. So the existence of wealth in itself, it's not the problem. The problem, of course, is our use of the wealth. It's what we always say here, that money is neutral, right? Money is not good, not bad, not good, not evil. The use we make of it can be good and can be bad. Again, it's on humans the responsibility of using, distributing wealth. It's not wealth in itself. So, of course, with wealth come the risks that that the Spirit tells us: pride, selfishness, lust. These are all consequences of wealth, which they say it's a more slippery trial, more dangerous than poverty. Again, poverty is always also a very difficult trial, because the lack of basic necessities makes us struggle and makes us doubt the Creator and the creation. So they explain here that when Jesus on the parable that we read about the young man that had to get rid of everything, what Jesus meant was the attachment to what he had is the obstacle to salvation. In the end, it goes back to what we discussed in the parables, right? It all goes back to without charity, there is no salvation. Of course, the gospel is written, the gospel according to Spiritism is written in an order that makes us build on what we read before. So the chapter we just finished, without charity, there is no salvation, leads into this chapter when we talk about wealth and the necessity of wealth. But of course, referring always back to that previous chapter, without charity, there is no salvation. And then the Spirit tells us to further develop the concept of the importance of wealth existing, because without wealth, it will make very difficult for us to evolve intellectually. Wealth allows us to evolve intellectually. The use we make of it is what makes a difference. Again, if wealth could produce only evil, God would not have put it on earth. So it is humans who abuse wealth that are the ones responsible. And again, we have to be very careful here when we analyze those. Sometimes we judge wealthy people because despite using their wealth to help others, they also use their wealth to abuse power. Everything has a balance. We are imperfect spirits, so being rich or being poor does not mean being perfect, being more evolved or less evolved. And sometimes those that use their wealth to help others to a larger scale, but also use it to cause some harm around their inner circle, it'll be their responsibility. The evaluation of a person's journey is balancing what they did to evolve morally and intellectually. So each one of us, if we look at our lives, we are going to see parts of it that we are not very proud, that we regret, and parts of it that we are more proud of how we behave, how we act. And that's in the end what we're going to carry with us. So the very wealthy or the wealthy, again, it will be their own conscience that are going to judge them. They will find themselves in the spiritual world according to their deeds, according to what they made of the wealth that they had. But again, wealth being used to progress, for the progress of humanity, even if it is for those that are using this wealth for science to progress, even if it's with their objective of becoming more rich, it's the personal responsibility, the consequence. But if they help humanity evolve, at least they are doing what they are supposed to do with their wealth. So that's why we have to be very careful when analyzing those that are using their wealth for some reasons that we don't find it very useful, we have to be very careful. The problem here is that those that only use their wealth to gain more wealth without investing in the progress of humanity in any sense. So if, let's say, someone that has a factory and builds, use his wealth to build another 5 factory, and it's giving employment to a lot more people, it's using his wealth to help others, but at the same time, it doesn't pay his employees a decent salary. So it's a balance of using his wealth to the benefit of others, but at the same time causing harm to these same people that he's employed. What the responsibility in the end, it will be in the balance of everything. But again, let's understand that wealth in itself, it's necessary for the evolution of the world. And this last paragraph, which is very interesting to be written in 1864, right? That the spirits talk about the countries needing to destroy physical barriers, that to make communication more rapid, that to extract materials from Earth, to invest in science, all of this that we, looking back, we know that it has been done by many to help us progress, again, with all the problems that it creates also. Of course, we're not saying that this is all done in the most efficient or right way. Of course, a lot of this progress and a lot of this destruction of physical barriers between nations are not done in the best possible way. But what the spirits are telling us is the necessity of doing this. It has, because this activity develops our intelligence. And this intelligence, which in the beginning is done to develop, to satisfy our material needs, will later help us understand great moral truths. And we are seeing this happening, right? Because the more we understand, the more we connect to each other as the world evolves, we have more and more people concerned about the future of the planet. We're not going to discuss here the concerns and their methods, but the concern with the future of the planet is something that nowadays it's talked a lot out there amongst politicians, amongst activists and things like that. You didn't have this 100 years ago. You didn't have anyone talking about this, the survival of the planet for future generations. Now we have many people concerned about it. Right or wrong, the methods we can discuss, the objectives can be selfish or others, but the importance that is being discussed will lead to more progress, will lead to investment, to improvements of Earth, in a sense, for ourselves when we come back in future reincarnations. When we talk about climate change, that is something that is out there in the news and concerns a lot of people. It was something that 50 years ago was not discussed, right? In the 70s, it's when they started discussing climate change and the effects on the planet and the effects on the ozone layer and things like that. So it's something that has been happening for the past 30, 40, 50 years only, which is a sign of progress. Again, I'm not taking sides here, and that's not our objective here. What I'm talking is that as a means of progress of human society, these things have to come to the forefront of discussions, right or wrong, moving forward and sometimes moving backwards a little bit, but it's all part of the progress, intellectual progress that will lead to moral progress as we become more aware of our spiritual nature, of our eternal nature. So it's very interesting that this was all discussed and presented by the spirits 150 years ago, more or less. Okay? 1 hour of me talking by myself. Anyone else?
Okay, we continue.
Okay, so we continue.
The inequality of riches. Number 8, the inequality of riches is one of those problems one tries in vain to resolve if one considers only the present life. The first question that presents itself is, why are all humans not equally wealthy? They are not equally wealthy for one very simple reason. They are not equally intelligent, active, and industrious enough to acquire wealth, or moderate or foresightful enough to preserve it. Furthermore, it is a mathematical demonstrated fact that if wealth were divided equally, it would give each person a minimum and insufficient portion. That if such division were carried out, the equilibrium would soon be shattered due to the diversity in character and aptitudes. That if the division were possible and lasting, with each person having only enough to live on, it would be the end of all the great endeavors that contribute to the progress and well-being of humankind. That if it provided each person with what is necessary, there would no longer be the stimulus that compels humans to great discoveries and worthwhile enterprises. If God concentrates wealth in certain areas, it is because from there it expands in sufficient quantities according to the necessities. In accepting this fact, one might ask why God grants wealth to persons who are incapable of making it fruitful for the good of all. This is yet another proof of God's wisdom and goodness. By giving humans free will, God wanted them to reach the point where, through their own experience, they could distinguish between good and evil, and that the practice of the good be the result of their own efforts and will. Humans must not be fatalistically led either to good or evil, or they would be nothing more than passive and irresponsible animal-like instruments. Wealth is a means of testing them morally, but since it is simultaneously a powerful means of inducing progress, God does not wish for it to remain unproductive for long, and thus moves it around incessantly. All persons will possess it at one time or another in order to try their hand at it and to test the use they make of it. However, since it is physically impossible for all to possess it at the same time, and moreover, if all did possess it, no one would work and the improvement of the planet would be compromised. Each individual possesses it in turn. The one who does not possess it today has either had it already or will have it in a future life. And the one who possesses it now might not have it tomorrow. They are both rich and the poor, because since God is just, each must work in turn. Poverty is for some a test of patience and resignation. Wealth is for others a test of charity and self-denial. The lamentable use that some persons make of their wealth and the ignoble passions that greed provokes are rightly deplorable. And one might ask if God is really just in giving it to such persons. It is certain that if humans had only one life to live, nothing would justify such a division of earthly wealth. However, if instead of limiting our vision to the present life, we would consider the whole sequence of lives, we would see that everything balances out justly. Hence, the poor no longer have reason to accuse providence or to envy the rich, and the rich no longer have any reason to gloat over what they possess. If they abuse it, it is not with decrees of sumptuary laws that wrongs will be right. Laws are temporarily change one on the other side, but they cannot change one's heart. That is why these laws have a temporary duration and are always followed by a reaction even more unrestrained. The source of the evil resides in selfishness and pride. Abuses of every kind will cease by themselves when humankind rules itself according to the law of charity.
So that's a basic question for those that want start studying religion, spirituality, the inequality of riches, right? Why has God created those that are very rich, those that are very poor, and all in between, right? Why are not all humans equally wealthy? And again, if we believe that we have only one physical life, we would have no answer for these questions because it wouldn't make any sense. Now, if we understand, according to Spiritism, that we have multiple lives, that the law is of progress, that we have multiple reincarnations, then starts making sense that we all will have different experiences on our journey, on our incarnations. So also, according to our level of evolution, we are not all the same. We have different intellectual abilities, different moral evolution. Again, we live in a world of trials and expiations, or trials and atonement. So we are all still imperfect spirits trying to learn to progress, but we are at different levels of evolution. And because we are at different levels of evolution, we have different necessities, different needs. And these needs are going to be fulfilled in our reincarnations according to the best available resources for us to achieve what we need for this incarnation. So we have to have differences, again, at our level of evolution. If everyone had the same and couldn't have more than others or couldn't have less than others, you know, we are all lazy, actually. That's the reality. As imperfect spirits, we are all basically lazy. So if we didn't have to make any effort, the minimal effort is our evolutionary law at our stage of evolution. So we need differences for us to learn from others and to evolve. So if all wealth was distributed equally, next day, it wouldn't already be equal because we have different capabilities. So again, we just studied the parable of the talents. The use we do of the talents, it's different amongst each one of us. So the distribution of wealth equally amongst all wouldn't work because according to our differences, we'll start making differences, right? And we had some experiences in society, right, that imposed the equality of wealth amongst all, considering in the imperfections of humans. Of course, we divided the world, that they divided their places into classes, right? The ones that took the governance and the ones that were governed. So it was not all equal, but some were less equal than others, like George Orwell said in the Animal, I forgot the name of the book, the Animal something. So
Farm.
what? Animal Farm, thanks. Yes, thanks, Wayne. The Animal Farm, yes. Which is something that was written is a criticism to communism, right? And the equality of the the imposition of distribution of wealth, which is what the spirits are telling us here way before that. And remember, this is a time that Marx was beginning to write his works on equality, right? Marx had a mission here and failed his mission because his mission was to spread the ideas of the possibility of all of us living, trying to live with the same rights and the same responsibilities, but not as an external imposition, but as an internal learning and division. And he failed, like Napoleon also had a mission to come and bring the concepts of the French Revolution spread throughout Europe, and he misunderstood his mission, and he tried to physically conquer the whole of Europe. And of course, we all know that how it ended. So again, these missionaries that they came in the 19th century. Some failed, some succeeded. Abraham Lincoln is one that succeeded. Allan Kardec left us all this work, another missionary that succeeded. And we had those that succeeded partially, and those that failed. We had Darwin that also succeeded in bringing his teachings, and Thomas Edison and many others. So to our need, going back to our need of evolution, we need to have it. Yes, Sally. You're mute.
I'm a little confused because I seem to get the feeling that you're saying that at different stages, God kind of dictates that we're going to be wealthy or poor, but surely due to our own evolution, it's not that we'll all get a chance to be wealthy or poor, but it depends what one does with one's intelligence and with one's discipline and so forth, and that some people may not really, it's not like we take turns, you know. To me, it's a case of, well, what do you do with it? Because as you say, the money is neutral. So it might not be that some people might never actually seek the money side of life. And others might exclusively seek the money side of life for many reincarnations, but that it's not a case of, well, we all get a turn to experience riches and then all get a turn to experience poverty. What do you think?
Yes, you are absolutely right. When we talk about our intellectual evolution, it doesn't mean that we need to learn everything in math, in physics, in chemistry, in biology, in medicine, in architecture, and that, you know, the evolutionary path doesn't mean we have to go over everything. So you are absolutely right. We don't need to go through absolute poverty or the extreme wealthy if we are able to evolve in the middle path,
Okay.
which is always the best, right? And we make good use of our opportunities. So, but you know, think of some of the billionaires that we have nowadays, right? You have those that are using their wealth in a good way, and those that are using their wealth in a dubious way, right? So, did they need to become billionaires, or they became billionaires because of their work, or what is the reason there? We don't know. It's each one has their own path of evolution, but with the becoming rich becomes responsibility also, right? What you are going to do with it. So we have, of course, we don't know this, but we have many that despite their ability to become rich seems to be incapable of getting rich. Why? Because if they become rich, they are going to abuse it. So by their own choice, or by your choice of the spiritual benefactors, they will face obstacles very difficult to overcome to become rich, because it will cause them more damage than good. For those that are extremely poor, that's not a gift also, because there are those that are extremely poor and resort to stealing, to deceiving others, to blame the world and everyone else and cause harm to others. So they are not taking the opportunity of this very difficult trial to evolve, right? So it's an individual journey. The best path is the mid path, right? Not being extremely rich, not being extremely poor. And if we make good use of it, we can continue coming back and making good use of it. But in thousands of reincarnations that we are going to have, it's very likely that we are going to face one that we have more wealthy than our neighbors, and one that will be poor, maybe not extremely poor, but face difficulties to survive. Because, you know, if we don't face those challenges, maybe these are lessons that we need to still to learn. And again, we need to face the challenges to see if we have overcome the difficulties. As I normally say, if you never try your patience, you will never know if you're patient or not, right? You need to try your patience to see if you are patient or not. So some of these trials, again, we don't necessarily need to go through all of them, but it's likely that we will go, because it will test us for ourselves, for our progress.
Do you believe that the spiritual benefactors create those situations, or do you believe that just by our own volition, we are actually creating those situations ourselves?
We create okay. Ourselves. Yeah. Now, when we are there in the spiritual world, if we are aware of reincarnation and we are part of the planning of our new reincarnation, we are going to choose this sort of challenges according to what we believe are our needs. And if we can't, if we are not planning our reincarnation, our spiritual benefactors will place us in the places where we have the best chance to succeed according to our needs. Not according to what we want, but according to our needs. And sometimes our need is to be born very wealthy or very poor, because that's a challenge that we need to face to learn from it, right? Again, the responsibilities according to our knowledge, and that's you know, the spirits give examples in the spirits book. The one more responsible is the one that was poor and became rich through his work, is much more responsible to help the poor than the one who was born rich, because the one that was born poor lived the difficulty, knows about it, so he or she has more responsibility of taking care of those in similar needs. Those that are born rich, again, doesn't exclude that we all have the responsibility, but the law of cause and effect has a different conclusion for those that are born rich and do not use this opportunity to help others. Again, each case is a case, right? But what we need to understand here, as we learn in Spiritism, is that everything happens for a reason, that nothing out there is the riches and poors, and the personal journeys of each one is according to their own free will, but also according to what it's the opportunities are best for them to evolve. And as society, we still need these differences. At our level of evolution, we still need these differences. Again, in a more evolved world, in a world of regeneration that we're going to go into, these differences are smaller and smaller. And again, we have some examples, right? Some countries that the inequality of riches is much smaller than in other countries. We can talk about, I don't know, as an example, New Zealand, right? Which is far from everybody here. Not so far from you, well, still far from you, Sally, but closer than from us here. Which is a country that the inequality of riches is much smaller than other countries. It doesn't preclude from having problems. You had a couple of years ago this horrible killings in New Zealand, right? So evil, it still exists because there are still spirits there that are inferior. But you have a better possibility of have a more safe safer life in this country. So these are where we will all be in the one day in the future as Earth continues to evolve, or in other planets where we are more evolved. So the inequality of riches is something that with our evolution, eventually will going to disappear. But this is eventually is going to take a very long time. And how it is going to disappear, it depends on us, on our free will, on our journey as society all together to change this and to progress. That we've been doing this for a very long time and will continue to do it for a very long time. Okay. Okay, we're not going to continue here. We have only 7 minutes left. I'll leave this true ownership for Elmo next week. If anyone has any additional comment, question, I hope it helped a little bit to learn about wealth, poor, and the parables, that the meanings of the parables. Okay, so let me stop sharing here. As I mentioned on Thursday, for those that were not here on Thursday, starting in May, we are going to have some changes in our meetings, because we're on Thursdays, we're going back to the center for the study of the Spirit's book. We'll continue to do it virtually. We'll continue to do it. So for those who watch it online, there won't be any change except the time. It'll be from 7 to 8, okay, p.m. Eastern time. And the second part, where we study the Medium's book, we are going to pass the study of the Medium's book to the third Sunday of the month. So this Sunday that we are here, the third Sunday, we are going to continue studying the Medium's book from where we have stopped in a couple of weeks, when we'll do the last study on the Thursdays. So for those that watch our meetings online, no changes, except the time on our Thursday meeting from 7 to 8, the Spirit's book. For those that want to go to the center on Thursday and study with us there, the Spirit's book, we'll be inside the center. There will be the fraternal assistance. There will be the passes after the meeting, but the meeting from 7 to 8 will be together, hybrid, online and with us there. Okay. Any questions here? For those that are hearing this for the first time or still have not fully understand the changes?
Is that 7 o'clock in the morning or the evening?
The evening, 7 p.m. So for you, middle of the night. Yeah. So the only change for those, again, watching online is from 6:30, it moves to 7 p.m., right? I'll be there at the center conducting the Zoom study from the computer there. And so if you are watching online, you'll see exactly as you are seeing me today in our regular meetings. Nothing really changes. Okay. Next Sunday is the last Sunday of the month. So we'll be doing our Q&A session. Okay. So bring your questions. We are going to have Elmo back also to answer the questions. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you very much, John, and everyone. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together today as brothers and sisters, as our studies are of the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 16. You cannot serve both God and Mammon. Let us share our time, talent, and treasure to help others in the world. We do the best with what we have, and what we can do is act generously from our heart and mind. Wealth and poverty can be both challenging trials, but may we balance our lives by reducing pride, selfishness, vanity, inequality, callousness, and harmful intent. We are gratefully all progressing intellectually and morally. And we are also concerned now about the planet and society evolving as well. We have multiple lives. We know that there is the continuity. As we pass from this world, we will come back. We will have many opportunities to continue progressing morally and intellectually. We give thanks for the opportunity to know that charity is love in action, and that we are learning from others the virtues of benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness. We are creating our future in this very moment. May we live with nobility of the soul, an open heart and mind. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the helping hand that we all are receiving each day, each time that we tune in, and that we are willingly downloading the helpful information to guide us. We are grateful for the love, light, and peace of Christ, the one bearing the heart, the great heart of light for all of us. We are grateful for the opportunity to receive the knowledge and wisdom through Spiritism. And we are grateful for our communities, not only our local communities, but the communities of Spiritism throughout the world. We are truly blessed, and may we continue to give our gratitude and thanks for this to happen and continue to evolve. And as we close this meeting today, we ask for greater understanding in the world, a greater peace, a greater concern for others, a greater willingness to be of service and to share with our brothers and sisters throughout the world the goodness and grace. We close now and humbly ask to go safely and to be protected as we go to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers, for we are never alone. And may this goodness and the light of Christ go with us, and may it continue to shine the blessings upon not only ourselves, but our family members and the greater world. We close now and go forth in gratitude and peace. So be it.